I would now like to invite our chair to the dais. With us we have Scientia Professor Deo Prasad, Order of Australia, FTSE, CEO, NSW Decarbonisation Innovation Hub, University of New South Wales, Sydney. Professor Deo Prasad is a recognized leader in sustainable buildings and cities with extensive contributions to sustainability education, research and design. Elected as a Fellow of the Royal Australian Institute of Architects in 1991, he has been driving force in both academia and professional practice. He received the Royal Australian Institute of Architects National Educational Award in 2006 and the Green Globe Award in 2004 for his leadership in renewable energy. Professor Prasad is the CEO and Chief Investigator of the Cooperative Research Centre for Low Carbon Living, CRCL-CL, the largest ever industry government profession research collaboration in Australia's built environment sector. So please come on to the dais. I would now like to hand over the session to you, sir.
Sorry, now it's okay. Okay, thank you very much for the kind introduction. This is my third Griha summit, so there must be something going right here for me to come third time to Delhi to attend this very good knowledge sharing and networking conference with great papers. As you saw over the last 2 days, I think we have had a very good range of papers and discussions here, and I have been involved outside in the networking sessions a lot as well. We have a very eminent group of panelists here, and I would like to invite them to the stage. Mr. Rajendra Ratnu, IAS, Executive Director, National Institute of Disaster Management. Mr. Sanjay Seth, Vice President and Chief Executive Officer, Griha Council. Mr. Hemant Bhawani, Senior Scientist, National Environment Engineering Research Institute, NERI. Dr. Nupur Bahadur, Associate Director, Circular Economy and Waste Management at TERI. And Mr. Sharif Kamar, Associate Director, Transport and Urban Governance at TERI.
Before we proceed for the session, I request the panelists to come forward for a photograph.
Thank you very much. So, having brought such a great panel together, I think we should start with giving them a chance to talk about challenges and opportunities in this area more broadly, to introduce their topic and interest point from where they are coming. So, Mr. Ratnu first, perhaps.
Well, the challenges for transforming the urban infrastructure coming from the National Institute of Disaster Management, I'll like to tell one, we know is that the growing population, the pressure on the unprecedented rate of urbanization is happening, and that also we see the very unequal pattern of urbanization, and the nature of urbanization is very different. So that also we need to discuss, and this thing, when we talk about the cities, we only think about very bigger cities which are already under mess, And we are continuing to, I think, we have left our focus from the smaller cities, because the current programs where we are focusing that, 100 smart cities, 100, sustainable cities, but there are thousands of smaller towns which actually have been a cushion for rural to urban migration, and which are the growth engines of our rural economy. So equal focus is needed there, so that a flux of migration to the bigger cities can be, checked. Second area is, the economic imperative, and third is the climate imperative, which becomes the big challenge. The economic imperative, that our vision for a Viksit Bharat or a Atmanirbhar Bharat makes, and there are a lot of incentive-based schemes for higher investment in the country, and there's an ambitious target of 5 trillion USD economy by 2030 and more than 25 trillion USD economy by 2047. So once this kind of growth, economic growth, is going to happen, and we already know that industries always look for good infrastructure, good power supply, reliable, other infrastructure, which always is there in vicinity of the cities. And the third dimension is related to climate, and the second and third challenge make it all the more complicated, that it is not only climate induced disasters that are going to happen more and more, as there is going to more industrial neighborhood in the cities. So that also again poses a new challenge, because the gap between the residential areas and the industrial area or hazardous area. We yesterday had an event in the same India Habitat Center, looking back at 40 years of Bhopal gas tragedy and where we are heading to. So I think we also need to understand that not only the climate-induced disaster, but we also need to prepare ourselves for those kind. In this context, we need to see that how we design our urban infrastructure so that it is climate responsive, it is disaster resilient, and it is also able to not only have that factored into the resilience, but also redundancy factor, because of if it is a drainage pattern, we need to think about. So all these challenges are there, and I think we can discuss more as we go along.
Thank you very much. We'll come back to questions after this, but also for the audience afterwards there'll be opportunity to engage, ask questions, so keep your questions prepared. Mr. Sanjay Seth.
So addressing the same issue?
Yeah.
So I'll just take off from where Mr. Ratnu left. Urbanization is a reality. We are going to be seeing more and more urbanization taking place. We are witnessing this, more and more tier 2, tier 3 cities becoming megapolises, all of that. And obviously, I think the current way of looking at is that we first let the problem arise and then we start looking around for solutions. And the adaptation bit and the resilience bit is kind of missing from the entire planning process. If we are more receptive to planning it better, I think then the chances of kind of finding solutions to the problem would be obviated. So that's one, of course. But at the same time, we must also be reminding ourselves of one major, if I may say, a very critical issue, which nobody probably discusses this. Discourses like this happen in rooms like this, where people at the top level or people who are really, people who are leading programs, they come and discuss and they go out, they deliberate on issues. But the poor people who are at the grassroots levels, who have to really go about delivering and acting on those, they do not have an idea as to what needs to be done. So while these jargons, these, climate change, the mitigation, adaptation, resilience, all of these issues, they get limited to jargons. And the capacity at the grassroots level where it is really required to roll them out, you may have the best policies in town, but the frameworks for its implementation and the people who are in charge of those, for those frameworks to be rolling out, If their capacities are found to be wanting, then I'm afraid that we will not be able to see the transformation or the actions that are required to be seen on ground. So I think I'll pause here and let the other speakers as well give their perspectives. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Hemant Bharwani.
I would just continue the discussion which is happening. I think what we are discussing is that related to the disaster management, or from a climate change perspective, what kind of adaptation and mitigation strategies should be there, and how they are actually to be implemented. Now, one of the aspects on which we are working, like as CSIR, NERI, and I personally work, is related to urban transformation from a microclimate perspective. So basically what we are trying to do is building resilience into the city's development. So what we are trying to do is that there are bylaws which are put in place by municipal corporations and from the central and the state government, that this is how the infrastructure should be built. There should be open spaces, there should be green spaces, then certain distances should be there, roads and pavements should be built in a certain manner. From green infrastructure point of view as well, we are saying that this much amount of green infrastructure should be there. But from a scientific perspective, we have not thought it in detail that can we play around with these kind of the development points which have been put in place. Can we position them in a manner that they become climatic, they become resilient to the climate change which is happening. May not be completely, but some amount of resilience is brought into that type of infrastructure which is being built. So we use computational fluid dynamics, the modeling tools, in order to understand if the placing of the green infrastructure, the height of the buildings, the pavements and the distances between the buildings, if they are changed and altered, would they lead into better airflow? Would they lead into reduction in the overall temperature of that particular region? Would they lead into improvement of humidity? You all must be aware about PET, that is physiological equivalent temperature. That is the thermal comfort scale which on which it is measured that how people are feeling in a particular area. So can we improve that particular scale in that? So as a researcher, we are working on such type of modeling tools. So and the idea is that the development should not stop. The development will anyways continue, because we have heard from the panelists that urbanization is going on, and 70% of India is still to be developed, right? From the last panel, if you attended, you heard a lot of things about low carbon economy and the development which should happen in the country. So the development should not stop. That is not the agenda. The agenda is that while we are developing that, we should build climate resilience into it. And one of the ways on which we are working is doing that. Now, one more technical point which we need to include when we are doing such type of detailed analysis is that not all areas are similar, right? In India also, if you see, there are 5 different climatic zones which are present. So all different climatic zones will have their own different type of infrastructure to be built. The areas will have to be optimized, and that is where the detailing comes into picture. So for example, if you are building infrastructure in a coastal city like Mumbai or Chennai, it will be very different as compared to a hot and dry city like Nagpur or a Kota. Or if you compare it with the cold climatic regions like Leh, Ladakh regions. The infrastructure development will have to be different. So, one rule, one policy cannot be allowed everywhere. And that is where the nitty-gritty comes in, and that is where the local bylaws should be modified. So I'm coming from that perspective, and I'm happy to discuss it in more detail as we go along.
Thank you very much. Dr. Bahadur.
Coming to the challenges and opportunities, so particularly coming from the waste management background, looking at the solid and liquid waste, the prime challenge which we all are facing in today's time, whether it be solid waste or liquid waste, is that we are at source we have to manage. So if better we are able to manage at source, particularly the segregation in terms of solid, in terms of liquid, if we can have decentralized treatment solutions, then they can pave a better way, because we are treating, we are collecting, then sending a long way for treatment somewhere, and then we are buying back our water, which is coming in our maintenance bills for reuse. So if we can look at some decentralized treatment solutions, here comes a huge opportunity, and especially the sector which is here. And second is the, another challenge which comes is the demand. So if we can have point of use treatment, so we can have solutions and huge opportunities as per our requirements. And third point, if we have to see as a challenge, comes from the sustainability and the financial liability, which generally our societies face, or RWAs face, or our ULBs face. So if we can have truly the circular economy approaches, which are practical, which are doable, and if we can adopt those circular economy practices, we can address these challenges of ULBs for the financial sustainability, and we can manage our waste, both solid and liquid, at our level, so that we can address a larger problem there and then.
Thank you. Thank you. And Sharif Kama.
Thank you, sir. I just have 2 points which will broadly describe about the challenges that we are facing. One is in terms of planning, and I'll illustrate it with an example. We all love organic food, but organically developed cities, it's a problem for all of us, the planners as well as the policymakers. I think we need to have a proper planning perspective in mind. The second is in terms of system-based approach. And again, we need to look at multiple areas of interventions and the impact of these multiple areas onto different aspects of our day-to-day activity in a city. Again, I'll give you one example and which will illustrate as to where we are. For example, metro expansion happening in all across India. Approximately 17 to 18 cities now have metro system, total running kilometers about 1,000 kilometers across India. But we are only looking at metro development as a standout intervention for solving the problem of transportation or public transport in India. We need to also look at multiple aspects related to how do you then move people onto metro system. There are almost all the 17, 18 cities that that is seeing metro development. All of these cities are facing the problem of last mile connectivity. And where do, there are multiple challenges to it. The second is, and it's linked to the first one that I spoke about planning. When you plan for alignment of metro, we have seen it in Delhi. Some of the metro pillars are right exactly on the middle of some of our roads, busy roads, on Ring Road as well. This has a ripple effect on causing congestion on road, through peak hours as well as on normal days as well. So I think all these need to be looked at in a holistic manner, the challenges that we are facing. And I'll just add last point on the, we heard about climate resilience. It's a burning topic and it will go further, seriously on that. Because coming out of COP and the negotiations kind of falling short of expectations, we are going to see 1.5 degree surface temperature being breached, which has a huge implication on our cities as well. I think then what are the aspects that we need to look at to build resilient, climate resilient urban infrastructure, as well as other infrastructure beyond urban as well. So all these things we need to look at as a holistic manner. I'll stop here.
Thank you very much. So when you look at what's out there in our cities, how a lot of things exist, infrastructure, buildings and services. It's one thing to be able to do new ones well. It's another to be able to deal with what exists there. What sort of transformational opportunities do you think there are in terms of the existing infrastructure and buildings, in terms of improvements along the lines of both decarbonization as well as improving quality of life in those spaces? So it's a general question to all. Maybe you start with Sanjay.
Yeah, so you know, as you rightly said, that these urban spaces or the cities that we are talking about are actually economic drivers, right? And at the same time, these cities are being built for human habitation. After all, they are supposed to provide means of livelihoods, safety, comfort, all of those things. And if any of these elements go missing, then I think there is something wrong that we are doing in setting them up. Now, as the pressures increase, it is incumbent upon the planners, incumbent upon each one of us, that how do we go about making these more functional entities in terms of its, you know, the way they are, the reason why they are there. But at the same time, you know, I think you need to be mindful of the settings or the you know, the climates or the surroundings that we are bringing these up, or that the habitation is occurring, and not be, you know, not going around addressing the issues, aping it, looking at something else, just in our, you know, in our desire to kind of develop. So right now, the way we are doing the planning process and the way we are developing all of that is kind of more, I think it's more from an, you know, looking at what the others are doing, aping, right? So it's that piece, I think needs to be put in perspective when we are, you know, putting our, planning out our cities and making them more functional as we move along. Sustainable, resilient, all of these things have become buzzwords. But then really in terms of its operation, how do we take care of them when we are going through the process of making them and putting these together?
Yeah. And do you think there are tools and things that enable you to effectively look at a whole range, a more holistic approach that deals with things like resilience and carbon and a whole bunch of things that improve our quality of life? Are we able to encourage the connectivities between these well?
So, you know, Deo, I think this is very interesting that you asked me this. I work both in Griha as well as in TERI. Now, in TERI, we are currently looking at the urban living labs concept, right? What has worked well and what has not worked well while addressing a problem statement. So I think that becomes a test bed for seeing that what could be probably copied in as we plan or as we put our planning process in place. On the other side, in the Griha, the tagline is what gets measured gets managed. So I think data becomes very important, that whatever you need to do has to be not knee-jerk, but based on data-driven. So data-driven governance, data-driven planning, all of this in real time, and then using them as a test bed to do whatever you want to do and get you the way that you want to approach a problem, right?
Thank you. Thank you. Hammond?
Sir, so I would take your first question first regarding the existing infrastructure, I thought. So I think there is very limited, caveats which are available with us, options which are available. Given that the existing infrastructure was developed in a manner that it should provide sufficient, it should cater to sufficient need of the people. Having said that, there are things which we can do. For example, green roofing is there, vertical gardening is there, cooling, pavements are there. There can be some areas which are underutilized in terms of the open and the green spaces, so they may be modified. Apart from that, I don't think there is much we can do. The other aspect is from the controlling aspect. So we may be able to control the way in which the transportation is happening from the policy perspective, from the governance perspective. That may reduce the problem of urban heat island and the localized pollution which is happening. So in terms of the existing infrastructure, I would say that there is limited we can do, but surely we can do something. The other is related to the tools and the techniques which are available. So I think capabilities are there from the technical point of view. It's just that the connect between the technical side and the implementing agencies like the policy people and the people who are actually implementing it on ground. That connect is missing, I would say, because see, from a scientific point of view, we have a lot of tools and techniques which we can help the policymakers to design an urban area. There are agencies like NIUA, they are functioning pretty well from the governance point of view, from the implementation point of view. But from scientific point of view, that connect is still missing. I have been working with local corporations and helping them understand that how the area should be developed, considering that Nagpur is a dry climatic zone area. But that is very localized, solution providing, so to say. From a policy perspective, I would say that at a central level, such type of tools and techniques should be incorporated much more. And as he was saying, as Sanjay Sir was saying, that data-driven governance should be there. I would say data-driven development and the infrastructure development should be there.
Okay, Rajendra.
There are actually a couple of questions which are coming out of the conversation. So just to, in addition to, I think your question is already adequately answered, but Sharif had raised one or two questions regarding the planning process and integration of the different modes of communication. And Dr. Bahadur has raised question about, financing for the circular economy and need for the, liquid waste management.
We'll come to that.
And other thing. So
We'll come to that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So your question is
These
about
are general questions.
existing.
What exists out there, and can you see ways in which we can influence change and transformation there?
Well, I'll just, in that context, I'll just take the example of Delhi as a city and take example of, let us say, the seismic risk as this thing, and how the existing infrastructure can pose risk and what need to be done and what is imperative to be done. Given the kind of complexity in our urban settlement pattern in the Delhi, which is intermittently, there are pockets of totally unregulated development in certain villages, coupled with the complexities of new people going beyond the permissible limits in the existing infrastructure, as also the whether the shocks, due a seismic shock, I mean, we are talking enough about climate, but I think just sometime digressing from that, we are in the zone 4 here in Delhi. So assuming a moderate intensity earthquake also, we need to focus on our critical infrastructure, existing critical infrastructure, our lifeline infrastructure, which is hospitals and other things, our schools. And there is a great need to look at them for retrofitting whichever are the older buildings, so that at least those nerve centers of response can be. Another one very important thing comes in this scenario is the urban services. They create a very cascading risk. For example, if your gas pipeline is not resilient to the seismic risk, there'll be a huge number of urban fires will outbreak. Your hospital need to have a surge capacity of the burn wards, which require a very, very sanitized. Your orthopedic infrastructure need to be surged. So when we talk about the existing infrastructure and coming from the disaster perspective, I'm just thinking about a catastrophic event, and that will depend on different cities and a different climatic or risk zones. Sometimes there may be even cascading disasters. So you have a very, very hazardous chemical kind of industry. So how that gets affected, how your building infrastructure get affected, how your school. So this is very important to see that. We call it rapid visual screening of these structures. But I think having Dev Prasad ji here, who talks about the innovation in this space, I think there is also imperative need that where the manual human rapid visual screening, which may take decades for us to do this thing, can we think of a technology-based tools that can do perhaps some data can be thrown up about using artificial intelligence and modeling about the kind of intervention which are immediately needed on certain critical and lifeline infrastructure, followed by our other areas. So this is one perspective coming to my mind. Also public infrastructure, seeing from the urban flooding, urban other risk, which is a very commonly occurring, maybe low or moderate intensity, but we also need to see that how our both heat and water, we need to have more recharging kind of thing, as also see that how we can mitigate the urban flooding by keeping more cushions, sponges in the urban areas, and also from the urban heat perspective, that we are turning into heat islands, so how our existing infrastructure can be. And just a last remark, that what Mr. Seth has told about that, resilience becoming a buzzword. And somebody talked that we have capability. Yes, we have capability, but there is a huge gap between capability and capacity. So capacity in terms of the human resources is acutely lacking at the cutting edge level. There are resources, but there is a disconnect. And in that direction, I'll come to what NIDM is doing to address that disconnect. Thank you.
Yeah. Just to follow up on that, when you talk about resilience, there's the existing city as it has been planned and operating. Things like urban heat, a lot of problems, they say, is created because of the way we have done those things. Is there opportunity in terms of fixing, if you like, what is out there from disaster minimization point of view, from urban heat minimization point of view? Is there an understanding of what we can do around those?
I feel that, taking heat as an example and waste as another problem in the city, if we decentralize that, incentivize, today, every city you'll see that there is a huge vested interest. I do not want to go deeper into that, but there is a waste management system which is based upon tonnage of waste that you transfer to the transfer station. So what does that mean? We are incentivizing more and more waste generation from our homes and more transfer. Even many times I hear that private operator even dump the debris into the trucks to increase their weight load so that they can get more payoffs. Now, idea should be that the world where you have less, less waste coming out of this thing, you'll get more payment. So that we have a decentralized waste management system, and the same thing is converted into compost. And if government provides, or other corporate, the city governments coming forward to subsidize the rooftop kitchen gardening, on one side you can create really more organic food available to the people. There can be heat reduction in certain areas where, direct radiation is there. This is just one example, but similarly there can be many more things, provided we go from very, very centralized solution to more incentivization on a decentralized, localized, household level, neighborhood level, or ward level solution to both water as well as to the waste problem. Is one example of addressing this thing. There are other examples like Ahmedabad has done. So every city is required to have its heat wave plan. Some of the cities have made, some of them have made only paper tigers. They are not really working. So how to operationalize a plan, not only making the plan, but really putting them into practice. And it is all the more important where people are living in a very, very low income group area where the density is very high. There are tin sheets and those kind of material which is used. So there are, I think, I'm not a scientist, but I think there are paints and other things which are more reflective solutions which reduce the penetration of the heat, etc., can surely be tried and tested.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you.
So your first part of the question is, what are the existing challenges, right? So having this Griha summit and having a diverse practitioners and talking about different topologies here where we talk. So when we talk of waste management, particularly wastewater management in buildings, then we have different geographies, landscapes. So we have hilly regions, we have climatic areas like Ladakh and Rajasthan. So if we have to manage our wastewater treatment, so all these are critical issues. Then we have large number of unauthorized colonies. Likewise, very recently I've come across unauthorized industrial areas which are flourishing and running. So we cannot do anything about these. So even having a solution, we cannot go and help them because they are unorganized and unauthorized, so they are nobody's babies. So these are the existing challenges. Second comes on the technical side. When we have when people have to deal with the solution. So people in the hilly areas, they have different kind of problems. They have scarcity of water. Then the climatic conditions are such, and the conventional technologies which are there for treatment, they are highly dependent on climate. So they might not be working as successfully in a hilly region like Ladakh as in Delhi. So these are very practical challenges. Then today, country, it's not just about treatment, a high agenda on water reuse. So first of all, we have to treat adequately to make it point of use and then reuse. So these are the challenges. Now coming to your point and what change we can bring. So certainly there are solutions, and for an institute like TERI, we have practical solutions in all areas. So talking about decentralized treatment solutions, so in TERI we have technology, we have developed technologies which can work as decentralized solutions for, let's say, building itself. So instead, so you can collect water, treat water there itself, without any conventional technologies which require huge land space, biological treatment. We have advanced oxidation technology which can treat water there and then itself, and you can reuse from various low to medium applications. So this kind of decentralized treatment technologies we have to adapt for the building, construction, housing sector, and for the topographies. So such kind of technologies, they are resilient, climate resilient as well, because they do not require, they are not that much sensitive to climate, so they can be adapted to hilly areas of Ladakh or to the hot climate of Rajasthan. And one very important point for this gathering here, very recently we have come across a few and very famous cases where construction water was very important, because the building collapsed just because of the water which was used for construction was not of adequate quality. So here comes a very most important need for the quality of water in the construction and housing sector, where we are. So again, we have to look at the standards and the treatment technologies and standards for the construction and building sector.
Yeah. Thank you, thank you. Sharif, I think transport infrastructure is a very classic example of how things have changed around what we have in terms of infrastructure. So how big a challenge is that to deal with the transport infrastructure changes in cities towards what we think will be future cities in terms of the modes of transport, electric and all of that?
Sure. On a lighter note, transport comes the last. And that's what we are seeing in our city development as well. If you talk about affordable housing, most of the affordable houses that are being built or have been built are at the periphery of the cities. Therefore, you're locking those transport demand for at least 3 generations or more. So that's one big issue that we are looking at. I think we need to look at, and that's the same with the water supply, electricity supply, and all those things. But it's transport that comes at the last of overall planning, I would say. The second is in terms of most of the problems that we face, in particular if you're talking about India and in particular NCR, Delhi NCR region. 25 years back, when we had similar air pollution and soot related problem in Delhi, judiciary came to the rescue of the people in terms of having breathable air at that time. The industries were not so keen on shifting to CNG when the CNG transformation happened in Delhi NCR. We are there at a saturation level where the benefits of CNG has kind of gone away, and we need to look at different strategy for low carbon and perhaps zero emission vehicles running in our cities. I think we are again looking at judiciary. I'm part of the consultative group of the CAQM, which is Commission on Air Quality Management, looking specifically on transport. And that's the discussion we are having. I think we need to have those strong, big ticket items that need to be pushed and stop talking about small items and which would lead to small gains. We need to look the system, as I spoke earlier about, we need to look the system in a holistic manner. One thing trickling down to another, impacting another other aspects as well. So that's where we are looking at, and I'm also told that judiciary is having a bi-weekly meeting on the progress on transport-related emissions and emissions in the current scenario that we are facing right now. But it's a problem not only for Delhi NCR, but it's a problem across India. And there are about 130 plus non-attainment cities that we have, which are beyond the admissible air quality on average level. And transport being one of the key culprits, I would say, a key contributor. As part of Terry study, we estimated that it's about 23-25% of total emissions, ambient air quality that transport contributes to. I think there are a lot of challenges that needs to be fixed. Coming to the solutions, of course, there are, as I mentioned earlier, it's time to act right now. There are, I can't divulge into what these, thinking is from the policy level, but we need to look from a demand as well as a supply side regulations to push for zero emission vehicles. One example, and it's there in the media as well, and if you monitor the air quality across Delhi NCR, people are surprised to see why Chandni Chowk area is having a low air quality as compared to, I'm not saying that those air quality is still allowed to happen or we can breathe, but Chandni Chowk area is seeing a lower air quality, in terms of AQI. Yes, low AQI as compared to other parts of the city, and that's primarily because of some of the activities and some of the restrictions that the city has in that particular zone. Learnings have been drawn from that. Perhaps it could be implemented across Delhi. You have low emission zones across Delhi that could be spread out, and that could be one of the solutions to look at. Yeah, I'll stop here.
Yep, thank you. So another common element in all of our interest areas is knowledge. People say that knowledge exists. It just it's not transferred to the right people at the right time and place and all of that. What do you think in terms of urban transformation? Do we have knowledge, or there are huge gaps and shortfalls that still need to be created to help us get there? Sanjay? I think Griha is very much involved in this area of sharing knowledge to make things better.
Yeah, so I mean, look, there's no dearth of wisdom and knowledge in the country, right? So all of this is pretty much there. But when it comes to acting on those are the pieces which go missing. Yeah, so I think that's the reason why we are doing this summit around the theme accelerating climate action. Speaks volumes of why there is no action happening despite the knowledge being there. We all have these discourses. I mean, you look at not only national but international forums, all discussing the same things over and over again, and no solutions being found, while we know that what the solutions are. It's not that the solutions are not known. We have policies, you come back, you have policies, conducive policies created for those changes to take place, but then again, very little movement. Just to look at, let me give you the perspective of building codes, for example, right? So these building codes have been there since too long now, and we are still struggling to build up capacities in the states for implementation, because the people at the the municipalities or the development authorities at the subnational levels, either it's not there in their priority list, right? The priority list is to provide, now for example, the entire focus, if you look at, is on providing shelter to everyone. Now what kind of shelters are being provided does not matter. It's the speed and scale that one is talking about, and the elements of sustainability or the elements of comfort, they are all missing somewhere. So it's not that the knowledge is not there. Does it require knowledge to be building according to climate responsive design, for example, if you say, or low cost, no cost? Why do you want to keep incurring more and more costs? We know that if we do things right at the design level, it may not cost more. Yet we keep talking about green buildings. Let's go ahead and do green buildings. And then we look around for those jargons that green buildings. And then the next question is, do they cost more? Is it, where will I find material from? No. So it is climate responsive, passive design strategies, which we are all, I mean, it's been there for donkeys of years that our, our predecessors, they all have built their houses according to what we call, why were houses been built? For providing shelter, safety, comfort. Those things are being used, you use artificial means to provide all of these into the very houses that you, or the buildings that you live out of. So I think there is this, the mindset change, that the transformative actions. I think all of this, if you want action to take place, it's a change in the head that needs to be worked upon. And if you are able to do that, that societal change that one is required, the, how you think about, I think that is what is probably missing.
Yeah, so I totally agree with Mr. Sanjay, what he said, that, adoption is the challenge. I think there is a lot of knowledge which is available, and there are central policies as well. So for example, National Action Plan for Climate Change, there are missions which are listed. These state governments are working towards it. Basically, one of the mission is to actually collect knowledge and technologies which can be implemented specifically to that particular state and the area. So I think the work is being done, but as you were saying that, the adoption and the speed at which the adoption should happen, that is the challenge which we are facing. And I would say that that is the major critical step, the rate limiting step which we have. And so in terms of knowledge and technology, I think the country is reliant, self-reliant, but it is the adoption which is the challenge.
Yeah, thanks. On the knowledge part, I'll say that though knowledge is available, but problem is there in the dissemination and reaching out to the right kind of people. So what we need is a network that bridges the gap between communities, the practitioners, and academia and policymakers. Policy is made without knowing that there is so much of research in that area, evidence is available on that. Research is being done without connect to the real questions and challenges, because the academician does not know what are the real questions in that sector, because that sector hardly interacts with the academia. And market has its own agenda. It will call it's a green technology, but always we were talking before the summit that we need to really define what is green. When you say it's a green building, green infrastructure, because anything and everything which is going to make profit to the market, and if they can confuse the consumer and the society, they will call it green. Even the plastic, when it was invented, it was told to be a most revolutionary green item, because it is going to, change, so many trees are cut and paper is being used for packaging, and there is a great solution to that. So many a time we have to see in the holistically in the entire life cycle approach of a material or product, that whether really it is a green or a pseudo green, having a cover of green. So knowledge at NIDM, I am happy to share that we have created a network called IUIN for DRR, India Universities and Institutions Network. So this knowledge network has onboarded in last 2 years 318 universities and institutions in the country. And I'm in the process of creating knowledge verticals in each area, including urban experts who are working on the climate action, climate change, disaster risk resilience, so that this is available in free domain later on to practitioners of this thing. Today, if a city wants to really make that in that particular zone, if it is a heat wave related or urban flooding related, or to state साहब जो बोल रहे climate resilience, all these buzzwords को translate करके into real plan, they do not have, the municipal engineer does not understand, the municipal commissioner has hardly any people to support him. So how does this knowledge is available, but it is not reaching out to the cutting edge level. So that is a big challenge that we need to take that knowledge. Second thing is that, as rightly said, it is not always, even if the knowledge reaches, it is the affordability question. For example, I was just talking to Bahadur Main that I'm building a house and I'm thinking about a zero discharge solution. So I just asked you what is the, I was excited to know about the solution she has done, and I'm sure that in coming time it will be a great revolutionary invention, it will go down. But the cost at a household level solution of zero discharge, if you use mechanical, that this thing is around 15 lakh. So a middle class family, I may afford with difficulty, or this thing, no.
It was for the buildings,
No,
household level. That capacity was for a building.
So, I mean, the 5,000 to 7,000, liter discharge solution, if it is, I'm not questioning your, please don't take. So, what I'm telling, when it will up, it is a chicken and egg story. As more people will do adoption, the cost will fall down. So, initial time, there is a challenge in adoption of these inventions, which are very in direction, which are very well intended, but there is always adoption because of effort. When the solar came first, the cost was very, very high because as we upscale, so that comes a question that how we do commercialization of these innovations. So this knowledge, when translates into a commercial product, has to be affordable for the cutting so that it can get more adoption in the society. That is the limited point that I'm trying to, economies of the scale.
Coming to this sector, the challenges you mentioned. So actually, when we talk of the knowledge, as you said, particularly when we talk of science and technology-based solutions and knowledge, so that is actually, it is fine, it is there, but again, dissemination, as rightly pointed out by all of you, dissemination is very important, and reaching to the right stakeholder and to the end beneficiary, which is missing. So if we have a scheme for anything, it is not known to that particular last end beneficiary. So this is missing in all aspects, in all the solutions. Then secondly, in India particularly, thanks to Make in India, Made in India, Atmanirbhar Bharat, so the homegrown technologies are now in last 4-5 years, they are now valued. But still if the same technology comes from a foreign country with a German tag or a Denmark tag, it is widely adopted in the government sector and percolated through top-down approach. Whereas homegrown technologies, startups are struggling to get their route from bottom to up. Third problem it comes is with every green product. Green technology, green product, fine. It is truly a green product. Everybody wants a green technology, green certification with these 10 benefits. But cost should be the same. So if we are not able to have a 5% increase with the conventional cost, we cannot expect 10 benefits with regard to that. So green tag is, I understand green tag is coming with a little higher cost, which can, as rightly said, can go down with higher adoption, but certainly green tag and cost has to be understood and well taken into account. So this is my take.
Thank you. Sharif?
If I can just quickly add a point, like in COP29, they have, telling that 1.3 trillion USD green financing. So though whatever West has, always promised, has never reached really, but if at all this time they put the mechanisms to monitor and implement, we have to see that how this green funding can be really these kind of initiatives or this thing which are truly neutralizing emissions or encouraging circular economy, how this cost, which is slightly higher, can be built into that production process or to end consumer to give them subsidies or other benefits which can reach to.
Sure.
Yeah, sorry.
Again, I'll come up with 2 examples. One is, if you talk about knowledge, there is ample knowledge, of course. the contracting process that we have for developing infrastructure, and I'll give you an example from Dedicated Freight Corridor, which is an Indian Railway subsidiary. They have a very traditional, conventional, classical, item rate-based contract system, which did not promote any sort of innovation, or does not also currently. What Dedicated Freight Corridor, because of the funding from the multilateral banks, MDBs coming from the World Bank and JICA, what happened was the entire contracting process under DFC changed overnight. Although it took 3 years for DFC to kind of adjust to FIDIC. So it's a FIDIC-based contracting process that DFC follows right now, which gives ample room for the contractors, to the architects, to the designers, to innovate in a way that it is also low carbon. And therefore it has kind of succeeded a great deal in implementation of green infrastructure under railways. So knowledge transferring into contracting, and that contract transferring into on-ground implementation. The second is we are currently working with Delhi Metro on the life cycle assessment. Sir talked about life cycle analysis. We are working on the life cycle assessment of constructing of civil works in the metro systems. And the idea is, and the push is from the Delhi Metro, is to put green technologies and green materials at the forefront and give some sort of incentive at the DPR stage itself, so that these knowledge of green materials and techniques and technology, those are actually implemented on ground. And we are hoping that these LCA-based approach of using low carbon technologies will find its way into the contracts, and then the contractors would be liable for use of these materials and technologies. Yeah.
Thank you. So there's opportunity for asking questions from the audience. Any questions that you want to ask of anyone or the whole group?
Sir, traditionally in India we had this conventional wisdom of building in a low-cost manner, which was also sustainable. If we go and look at the traditional houses in Rajasthan or the stepwell method of construction, there was no air conditioning. Is a recent phenomenon. It got invented, I think, 30, 40 years ago or 50 years ago, I'm not sure. But those people survived, and in those climates. So we've had that conventional wisdom in our country, but now it is sort of, people are moving towards collective disillusionment, There's a disillusionment which has set in while there is knowledge, while there are people who have made a business out of that knowledge. It seems the quality of life is really going bad in our cities, especially this city. I was asking this question in the last panel also and did not get a satisfactory answer. I have been in this city for 30 years. Every 5 years, progressively, it gets worse. Right? Where it was 10 years ago and where it is now, and I really worry for this city what will happen 10, 15, 20 years down the line. So, Sir, Rajendra sir, you're from the government. Is there a sense of urgency in the government now that some drastic measures are required, or are we still in a business as usual mode, sir?
Well, to your first part and the second part. So the first part I'll answer more as an academician, and the second I will part on the governance. The first one, that we had traditional wisdom and traditional houses, like in Rajasthan. I also come from Rajasthan. The material economy is driven by two fundamental principles. One is called designed obsolescence and another is called perceived obsolescence. In your case, in the first example, it is a perceived obsolescence. When the Britishers colonized our country, they did not only colonize the country, but they also colonized our minds. So the market is driven by this perceived obsolescence, that you make yourself very obsolete. You're out of trend if you're doing this thing. So the first attack is on your culture. then you become a very potential consumer. Unless you are intact with your cultural roots and you are modern, you are no good consumer. So that is a fundamental. So when it comes to housing also, you are perceived to be poor. Your reference group is somebody who is having a very glossy with a glass panel house, even in Rajasthan where 50-degree temperature is there. So if you are, but we have to, this is possible to change this perception by adequately drawn social and behavioral change campaigns. And in my administrative career, I have done multiple such large-scale campaigns I have designed. This is not a forum to talk about them, but I can talk to you personally how we can change perception of the people, and there are experts to guide on this. About the second part of the cities in crisis is not only, it's a problem of Delhi, I think the planet is in crisis. So the city is a subset of that, and I think there is a huge crisis in terms of a deteriorating soil condition, which is making it very unaffordable for the farmers to make agriculture. There is a depleting groundwater in the rural areas where there is a borewell failure rate is so high, so a small farmer, it becomes very unaffordable to have a deep borewell because the cost of lifting the water goes very high. So there are so many other questions related to the climate and environment which we are into mess. And I think this is a larger question. Government has taken multiple initiatives in terms of addressing the climate challenges. Whatever has been promised at the Paris Accord, we have more than what West has done. India has done better performance than the Climate Change Performance Index 2022, which has been not by India, but a German independent group, including certain NGO groups. India is among the biggest country. India is the best performer in terms of climate change performance indicators, which are critical as per the SDGs and the commitment as the Paris Accord, including our track record in the renewable energy in terms of other carbon neutralizing. But yes, the challenge of the India is very different than other countries. The Scandinavian countries or the West may be talking big about today, but problem in India is that we need to give good standards of living, education, health, and livelihood to our people who are, large number of them are still deprived. We have to improve per capita income, and this process, this transition phase, we have to see that we are growing as an economy. We'll have to see that how we can strike a balance in this transition from a developing economy to developed economy, and the market will always drive and push for its development, but I think checks and balances in the system are very important. I was in DPIIT earlier, we're working for, ease of doing business, but I think we also need to see that along with ease of doing business, there should not be ease to pollute environment, ease to litter the environment, and ease to, pollute the planet. So I think these checks and balances are very, very important, where we facilitate our businesses, we facilitate our growth process, but at the same time, we also see that how we transit and we encourage our first movers to reduce emissions, whether in the transportation sector, energy sector, agriculture, and manufacturing, which are the 4 biggest emission producers in the country today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
So just to add to the first point, it is not that the knowledge is being lost. So, for example, we are working with SKMCC, which is the State Knowledge Mission on Climate Change of Maharashtra. There is a separate department which has been created to see what kind of traditional knowledge we had in terms of climate resilient built infrastructures, and what kind of technologies we currently have and in the past also which we had, which can be applied and scaled up in order to meet the challenges which are upcoming. So we are actually focusing, the governments also are focusing on the traditional knowledge which was there. So you can see the, the ministries which have been created from medicinal point of view as well. So Ayurveda, Unani medicines, they are also, coming into forefront. So it is not that the knowledge is lost. Yes, during some period, as sir also explained, that there was a halt in passing on that knowledge. But we are re-exploring and bringing that knowledge up and scaling up and as per the requirement of that particular area. So just to add to what sir said.
Thank you, thank you. We have time for one last question, a very quick one, but that's
Yeah, sorry. So I would like to ask the question to the whole panel that why don't we see some district or street level things like water harvesting, STP. STP is generally central, like one for the city, two for the city. But why don't we see harvesting units, these STPs or waste segregation bins for the street level? Like earlier it used to be there for streets. Like I'm from Jaipur, so around 200, 300 houses used to have a central kund sort of thing which used to store water, and those particular group of people were responsible for that, and they draw water from that. Why don't we see society, street level things as of now? Because to have a harvesting unit for a single household, a bungalow of let's say 2,500 or 300 square feet is very cost intrinsic for the individual, same for waste segregation. And but to have a street level thing and have a society level thing is much easier, but I feel that missing in places like Jaipur, Delhi. I don't find those things on the city street. It may be there for city level, but not for street and society levels.
I have a similar question, small one, sir. I live in Gurgaon. I have stayed in Delhi before. Why don't we see water metering at all? The real rate of water is not being charged, not from the poor, but also from the rich. When will we start metering water seriously and charging for it?
Okay.
On the first question, I'll just like to tell from my experiences in Tamil Nadu. I come from Tamil Nadu cadre, and I have always been known as a sort of champion of decentralization, zero waste movement. 2010, 9 to 10, there was a 1 year long campaign to turn Kanyakumari district into zero plastic district, and despite no regulation today, 50 to 70% of the people's social behavioral change is there to carry their cloth bags. There was a zero waste movement initiated in the 556 town panchayats of Tamil Nadu, 66 as the first pilot phase, where whole idea was that household level and segregate, and there was a great success achieved by appropriate technology, decentralization, giving training, and converting the dump yard and these things into resource recovery parks by giving a simple solutions to this thing. And on, there is a pilot on the septage and fecal sludge management solution also, which was done in a place near Chennai. And the first septage management policy and fecal sludge policy was brought out by Tamil Nadu in the year 2014-15, which talks about that no network, that is underground sewerage system, is a white elephant which kills the smaller towns, and this is totally non-viable solution for the smaller towns. So what you're telling is absolutely, I can't agree more than that. There are very good examples of these things being done, but again, there was a huge opposition when I was doing this thing, and none other than by my own engineers in the wing, because what was costing 55 to 60 crores in underground sewerage system, that was coming to 2 crore, 3 crore. There's a huge loss to contractor, to engineers, so many people. So there are, and there are more stories I'll tell you off the stage.
Just to add to what sir has said, to your first part, see, rainwater harvesting structures, they are mandatory in the buildings now. So the new buildings, they have this mandate, and the buildings, like when you talk of Gurgaon, so even the 20-year-old, 25-year-old condominiums, they have a mandatory rainwater harvesting. So rainwater harvesting has a huge impact, and it is practically being taken. Coming to next point, the government is coming to micro STP concepts. So what you are talking about is already in discussions. Only the technologies have to be identified by CPHEO to be mandated for micro STP. So micro STP, when they say, it has to be around 1 MLD at least. So those technology gap is here, where conventional technologies fail to address it, and new technologies have to be scaled up to that level. So here is the gap on policy side and technology side. So micro STP concept is coming very soon.
Yeah, and we can continue discussing this afterwards, because there's some
Metering to policy decision.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you. So we have time's up now, and just leave you with a thought at the end. I think lot of problems through poor design and planning that's been created historically, because we thought we were living in a land of abundance and not thinking about the impacts and all of that. Then we went on to trying to see if we can do less harm, in other words, less damage to the environment and all of that. Perhaps a paradigm change towards doing more good through design and planning decisions, as opposed to doing less harm, which is more around the principles of nature positive and regenerative design and planning of cities. And perhaps that might lead to a better building and city of tomorrow. So that's something to just leave with you, this whole approach to looking at design planning of cities from the point of view of doing more good in every element of design that we undertake. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, the panel. It's been great having the conversation.
Thank you, Professor Dev Prasad, for moderating the session wonderfully, and thank you to all the panelists for your wonderful deliberations. I would now like to request Mr. Sanjay Seth, Vice President and Chief Executive Officer, Griha Council, to kindly present a token of appreciation to our esteemed chair and the speakers. First, we have Scientia Professor Deo Prasad, Order of Australia, FTSE, CEO, NSW, Decarbonisation Innovation Hub, University of New South Wales, Sydney. Next, we have Mr. Rajendra Ratnu, IAS, Executive Director, National Institute of Disaster Management. Mr. Hemant Bhairwani, Senior Scientist, National Environmental Engineering Research Institute, NEERI. Dr. Nupur Bahadur, Associate Director, Circular Economy and Waste Management, TERI. Mr. Sharif Kamar, Associate Director, Transport and Urban Governance, TERI.